is our attempt at having a armband for the gathering of eagles. So the congressman's doing okay, but he's ready for the fight, and so are we.
Okay. Thank you, folks. God bless you.
Raoul. You guys know Dr. Raoul from Free Republic? Any of you Mark Levin fans out there have heard him on occasion? Yeah? Raoul's got a child who's an officer in the United States Navy right now. Yeah. He's going to have a few words for you.
Thank you very much for coming here. It's important that you be here. I very briefly want to cover three things. The other side is not holding a peace march. They're not holding an anti-war march. They're holding an anti-American march. Second thing, when they say they support the troops and they do things like reading the names of the fallen, they're lying. They're not doing it to honor the troops. And the last thing is, these are the throwbacks from the 60s. All their leaders are elderly. If this had happened 10 years from now, they all would be in the grave or the home and unable to organize these. They are out to smear this generation of military the way they smeared the military in the 60s. They are in the initial stages of a campaign to smear this generation of military as baby killers. As Colonel Patterson said, they're communists. And people will say that I'm picking at the fringes to smear the peace movement. I'm not. I'm talking about their leaders, the people that set up these rallies, the people that fund it, and the people the media won't cover. Every one of the major anti-war groups is an endorser of something called the World Tribunal on Iraq. It's this war's equivalent of the Winter Soldier investigation. They went over to Istanbul and gave testimony against America, and they had a finding of the jury, a declaration of the jury of conscience. And one of the findings is that any act, war crime, atrocity, whatever they do to kill American soldiers, innocent Iraqis, they claim is legitimate and justified. Those are the words, legitimate and justified, under the UN Charter and international law. All the major organizers of these anti-war marches can be found as endorsers. That would be International Answer, Iraq Veterans Against the War, which are the junior varsity of the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. They are modeled after and mentored by those people. Code Pink, United for Peace and Justice, Veterans for Peace. Those are the major organizers, and they are all endorsers of that tribunal and its findings. International Answer, if you go to their website, you can buy a Chase shirt. They are a front group for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. If you go to pslweb.org, there's Che Guevara. Underneath that, there's a picture of their banner, Che Guevara on one side, and a red star with a hammer and sickle on the other. If you hit the link that says education, it literally takes you to a page whose file name is Marxism 101. They have a flyer that they passed out from day one, and the title is Counter-Revolution and Resistance in Iraq. It ends with a call for, quote, unconditional support for Iraq's anti-colonial resistance. They're asking for unconditional support for those who are killing our troops. They are not a peace group. They are not anti-war. They've taken sides in this war, and they've taken the enemy's side. The Iraq Veterans Against the War, they just elected a new chairman, Camilo Meja. He proudly talks about how his parents were Sandinista revolutionaries, how he knows Daniel Ortega and General Humberto, and speaks lovingly of the triumph of the revolution in Nicaragua. These guys were part of the Veterans for Peace, and a large contingent of their leadership and membership are the old Vietnam veterans against the war. If you go to their demonstrations or look at the photos from their conventions, it's all the VVAW guys that are too disgraced to go out under their own name. They were mentored by and brought along by these guys, and that's how, and as a matter of fact, the formation of the IVAW was announced at the VFP convention in Boston. So when you see the Iraq veterans against the war, think Vietnam veterans against the war, because they're a bunch of John Kerry wannabes. They also sent Tim Goodrich over to the World Tribunal in Iraq, and he gave testimony on how our military is committing war crimes, in particular our Army. Code Pink is another major organizer. If you go to Amazon, you'll find a book by Medea Benjamin. Matter of fact, you'll find 3 books like this. Cuba, talking about revolution. These people sent supposedly humanitarian aid to Fallujah, $650,000. If you look at the people that are involved with that group, they did something similar during the 80s, claiming humanitarian aid, but actually raising money for the FLMN communist guerrillas in El Salvador. The United for Peace and Justice, the leader is Leslie Kagan, longtime member of the Communist Party. And like a lot of the peace groups, they can't get along, so she left that, started her own communist group, and because the peace groups couldn't get along with Answer, they started United for Peace and Justice. This woman went to Cuba in the 60s, received military and weapons training from Castro, came back to this country and facilitated other people going down there. Now this warmonger is leading a peace group. The one that's really outrageous is you see them as World Can't Wait. They have a logo of the world on fire. Supposedly the guy that ran the I Want My MTV campaign came up with that for them. If you look into it, go to Wikipedia, and normally I don't recommend it, but look up Revolutionary Communist Party USA. They are to communism what David Koresh and the Branch Davidians were to religion. They're a cult group. Their cult leader is Bob Avakian, A-V-A-K-I-A-N. Google that. They believe in an apocalyptic end to society, and they will lead the world on the ashes of communism. So Colonel Patterson is right. All the leaders, the people that facilitate these marches, aren't for peace, aren't anti-war, they are anti-American. When it comes down to their groups, when they say they honor the troops and support them, and they do things with the caskets and the crosses, reading the names, saying they honor them, they're lying. Gary Qualls is here. He lost his son, Lewis. He had to go to Cindy Sheehan's shindig in Crawford 5 times to get his son's name off that cross. Why did they turn down a Gold Star parent who didn't want his son's name on one of their crosses? The other group that puts out the boots, the American Friends Service Committee, 2 Mother's Day ago, Kristen Taylor, as a representative of 300 families from Fort Hood, gave their executive director the names of people that didn't want the names of their loved ones used. In a display intended to honor the troops, they used some really bad language in turning it down. They said they're not going to honor the